Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little different. We're diving into the world of Simone de Beauvoir, specifically for you, a fellow philosopher.
It's a deep dive that promises to be intriguing. Beauvoir's work, while influential, often operates in that fascinating space between traditional philosophical boundaries.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so exciting. We have excerpts from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on Beauvoir, her own works like The Second Sex and The Ethics of Ambiguity, and even some biographical material. We're hoping to uncover some of the nuances that might be missed in a casual reading.
The goal is to provide you with a deeper understanding of Beauvoir's philosophical contributions, particularly how she navigated and, at times, challenged the traditional philosophical landscape.
Right. Like, why did Beauvoir, with her undeniable philosophical rigor, resist being labeled a philosopher? What's behind that reluctance?
That's a question that has puzzled many scholars. One possible explanation lies in her unique approach to philosophy. She seamlessly integrated philosophical ideas into her novels and plays. Take She Came to Stay, for instance. It's a story about a love triangle, but it's also a profound exploration of existential themes like freedom and violence.
That's fascinating. She almost uses fiction as a testing ground for these complex philosophical ideas. Do you think she saw that approach as superior to traditional philosophical writing, or was it simply a way to reach a wider audience?
It's likely a combination of both. Beauvoir was critical of the rigidity and abstraction she often observed in academic philosophy. By embedding her ideas in narrative, she made them more relatable and accessible, challenging the notion that philosophy had to be confined to dense treatises.
And then there's the whole issue of her downplaying her own contributions, often attributing her ideas to Sartre. Makes you wonder about the intellectual dynamics of their relationship, but also about her own self-perception as a philosopher.
Her relationship with Sartre is certainly complex and has been the subject of much debate. But focusing solely on Sartre risks diminishing Beauvoir's own unique contributions. It's important to analyze her work on its own merit, recognizing her as a powerful philosophical voice in her own right.
Absolutely. So let's delve into the foundation of that voice. What were some of the key philosophical influences that shaped Beauvoir's thinking?
Beauvoir had a wide range of influences from Descartes and Kant to Hegel and Husserl. She engaged with existentialists like Heidegger and Kierkegaard, and phenomenologists like Husserl and Merleau-Ponty, and of course her ongoing dialogue with Sartre's existentialism played a crucial role.
It's almost like she took the best from each of these schools of thought and synthesized them into something entirely new.
Precisely. She didn't just absorb these influences passively, she actively engaged with them, critiquing, adapting, and ultimately forging her own distinct philosophical path.
And it wasn't just these intellectual influences, right? Major world events also shaped her thinking.
Absolutely. World War II and the Nazi occupation had a profound impact on her. She was forced to confront the stark realities of violence, oppression, and the fragility of human existence. This experience pushed her to move beyond abstract theorizing and grapple with concrete ethical dilemmas.
So it's during this period that her focus shifts more towards ethics and responsibility.
Yes, she began to explore questions of freedom, action, and the individual's role in shaping a just world. Her travels to America and China, documented in America Day by Day and The Long March, respectively, further broadened her perspective, exposing her to different cultural and political systems.
Each experience seems to add a new layer to her thinking, forcing her to reassess her philosophical assumptions and develop her ideas in even more nuanced ways. Now, before we move on to explore her key works and concepts, there's one essay title that really jumped out at me. Must We Burn Sade? It's almost shocking, coming from Beauvoir. What's the story there?
It's a provocative title, and intentionally so. In this essay, Beauvoir tackles the Marquis de Sade, a figure known for his extreme philosophical views on freedom, cruelty, and sexual liberation. What's fascinating is that she doesn't simply dismiss him as a depraved individual.
So she's engaging with Sade on a philosophical level.
Exactly. She analyzes Sade's ideas through an existential lens, seeing in his work a warped expression of the pursuit of absolute freedom, a cautionary tale about the potential dangers of unchecked individualism.
It's like she's using Sade as an extreme example to test the boundaries of her own existential ethics.
Precisely. By grappling with Sade's radical ideas, Beauvoir forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of freedom, responsibility, and the limits of morality. She asks what happens when the pursuit of individual freedom becomes divorced from ethical considerations. What are the potential consequences of such an unbridled pursuit?
It's a thought-provoking approach, especially for someone like you, a philosopher who's likely grappled with these very questions.
It's a testament to Beauvoir's intellectual depth that she's willing to engage with even the most controversial figures to push the boundaries of philosophical inquiry. Now, moving from this exploration of Sade, let's turn to some of the key concepts that emerge in Beauvoir's broader body of work, concepts that have had a significant impact on philosophical discourse.
Okay, give me the Beauvoir highlights. What are the ideas that really stand out, particularly from a philosophical perspective?
One of the most crucial concepts, and one that you're likely familiar with, is the idea of the other, which she explores extensively in She Came to Stay, and later fully develops in The Second Sex.
Right, the idea that we define ourselves in relation to others, but in that process, we risk objectifying and marginalizing those who are different from us.
Exactly, and this concept has profound implications for understanding power dynamics, social inequalities, and the very nature of identity. In Pyrrhus and Cineas, her early work on ethics and politics, she delves into the complexities of this relationship with the other.
She argues that the recognition of our freedom depends on others, right? That it's through this appeal to others that we validate our own existence as free beings.
Yes, but this dependence also creates ethical dilemmas. How do we navigate the tension between our own freedom and the freedom of others? When, if ever, is violence justified in the pursuit of freedom? These are questions that she grapples with throughout her work.
And it's not just physical violence, right? She also talks about the violence of objectification, of reducing others to mere instruments for our own self-realization.
Precisely. And this brings us to another crucial concept: bad faith. In The Ethics of Ambiguity, Beauvoir argues that bad faith is a form of self-deception where we deny our freedom and responsibility.
It's like pretending we don't have a choice when we actually do.
Whoa.
But isn't she also suggesting that there are times when bad faith might be a necessary coping mechanism, a way to navigate the overwhelming weight of freedom and responsibility?
That's an interesting interpretation, and one that many scholars have debated. Does Beauvoir suggest that there are situations where a certain degree of bad faith, of self-protective denial, is inevitable, even ethical? It's a question that she doesn't explicitly answer, but one that her work certainly provokes.
It's like she's acknowledging the limits of human agency, the fact that we often operate within systems and structures that constrain our choices. Now, we can't talk about Beauvoir without addressing The Second Sex, arguably her most influential work. It's been hailed as a cornerstone of feminist theory, but it's also a philosophical tour de force.
Absolutely. In The Second Sex, Beauvoir goes beyond simply critiquing gender inequality. She delves into the philosophical underpinnings of women's status as other, demonstrating how societal myths and cultural narratives contribute to the construction of femininity as a secondary subordinate category.
And her famous quote, "One is not born but becomes a woman," really encapsulates that idea, doesn't it? It's a rejection of essentialism, the notion that there's some innate, fixed essence that defines womanhood.
Exactly. Beauvoir argues that woman is a social construct, a product of cultural norms and expectations that shape our experiences, limit our possibilities, and ultimately define our place in the world.
She's essentially showing how what might seem like personal experiences, the everyday realities of being a woman in a patriarchal society, are actually rooted in deep philosophical and political structures.
Precisely. And this is where her philosophical rigor really shines. She meticulously analyzes the historical, philosophical, and cultural forces that have contributed to the subjugation of women, providing a framework for understanding gender as a system of power.
And she doesn't stop there. In her later works, she tackles other forms of otherness, exploring the experiences of the elderly in the coming of age, and even reflecting on her own experiences with aging, loss, and mortality.
It's fascinating to see how she applies her existential lens to these different stages of life, demonstrating that the questions of freedom, responsibility, and meaning-making are not limited to any particular age or experience.
It's like she's showing us that the quest for authentic existence is a lifelong journey, one that requires constant reflection, reassessment, and a willingness to confront the complexities of human experience.
And what's remarkable is that she does all of this while remaining deeply engaged with the world around her. She doesn't retreat into abstract theorizing. She constantly connects her philosophical ideas to concrete social and political issues.
Which brings us to her enduring legacy. Why does Beauvoir continue to resonate with philosophers, feminists, and, frankly, anyone seeking to understand the human condition?
It's her rare ability to combine intellectual rigor with a deep empathy for the human experience. She challenges us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world. But she does so with a compassion and honesty that makes her work both intellectually stimulating and emotionally resonant.
And she doesn't offer easy answers or simplistic solutions. Instead, she presents us with complex questions, challenging us to engage in our own philosophical exploration.
Precisely. She empowers us to think for ourselves, to question the status quo, and to envision new possibilities for human existence.
It's been a whirlwind journey through Beauvoir's thought, and we've only scratched the surface. But I think we've covered a lot of ground, especially for someone like you, a philosopher who can appreciate the depth and nuance of her work. As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious to know, as a philosopher, what aspects of Beauvoir's work particularly resonate with you?
Well, her unwavering commitment to challenging systems of oppression, her emphasis on individual responsibility within those systems, and her nuanced understanding of human freedom as both a gift and a burden, those are aspects that I find particularly compelling.
It's like she gives us the tools to analyze not just the world around us, but also our own place within it. And her work feels more relevant than ever. If Beauvoir were alive today, what causes do you think she would champion?
Given her deep concern for social justice, I believe she would be at the forefront of many contemporary movements, addressing issues like economic inequality, racial injustice, and climate change.
And she wouldn't just be offering theoretical critiques, right? She'd be urging us to take concrete action to move beyond mere awareness and engage in meaningful social and political change.
Absolutely. And given her nuanced understanding of freedom, I think she would challenge us to consider the ways in which our individual choices, even seemingly insignificant ones, contribute to these larger systems of oppression.
She'd be reminding us that freedom isn't just about individual rights, it's also about our collective responsibility to create a more just and equitable world.
Exactly. And she'd be pushing us to confront those uncomfortable truths about our own complicity in these systems, urging us to move beyond simply recognizing injustice to actively dismantling it.
It's almost as if she'd be holding a mirror up to society, forcing us to confront our own biases and examine the ways in which we perpetuate the very structures we claim to oppose.
And she wouldn't shy away from challenging those within these movements, pushing for greater inclusivity, deeper understanding, and more effective strategies for achieving lasting change.
She'd be a formidable force, that's for sure. So, to wrap things up, I'd like to leave you, our listener, with this final thought. If you could have a conversation with Simone de Beauvoir, what would be the one burning philosophical question you would ask her? What insight from her vast and insightful perspective would you seek?
It's a question worth pondering. And as you continue to explore Beauvoir's work, remember that her ideas are not meant to be passively absorbed, but actively engaged with. Challenge her assumptions, question her conclusions, and apply her insights to the complexities of your own life and the world around you.
It's in that ongoing dialogue, that wrestling with her ideas, that her true brilliance emerges. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Simone de Beauvoir. We hope this exploration has sparked a renewed interest in her work and inspired you to continue grappling with her challenging and enduringly relevant ideas.